Hi everyone. The author I chose to introduce to you probably doesn't need an introduction. It's J.R. Tolkien. I first discovered Tolkien back when I was 9 years old, and I found my father's Lord of the Rings books tucked up on a shelf somewhere, and I started reading them, and I absorbed all of them like within a year. And by the time I was 11, I had several chapters memorized, especially in the Fellowship of the Ring, which I just thought was hilarious. There were so many um, dialogue lines that just cracked me up, like when Gandalf knocks on Frodo's door and Frodo tries not to let him in, and suddenly he realizes who it is and he runs and he's trying to quickly make up for it before he angers a wizard. Um, Tolkien first published The Hobbit in 1931, but due to becoming a professor, he wasn't able to publish again until 1954 when The Fellowship of the Ring first came out. He published in the U.S. It came into print in 1965, 10 years later, or 11, I suppose. Um, Tolkien was also a member of a small writing group called the Inklings. Through it was a writing group that was more casual, but based through Oxford. And C.S. Lewis was a member of that as well, and they were close friends. But that group specifically dealt in poetry and short stories. So Tolkien had a lot more written than just The Hobbit and the Fellowship and the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That was probably shared in smaller doses, but those are the ones he was the most famous for. Um, I suppose uh, the thing that stands out to me most about Tolkien's style was the magic in his world building. Like I said, I was about 9 years old, between 9 and 11, when I was really obsessed with his work. But I could just see everything so vividly when I read those stories, and the characters just seemed to have so much history in them. And a lot of people I've heard argue about, well, Tolkien wrote history, he didn't write a novel, it wasn't a story. But I think it was just a very self-indulgent style for him. It was a very self-indulgent piece in a project. He told those stories to his kids for bedtime stories, and so I don't think he was really writing it with specifically publishing in mind and a specific style or genre in mind. I think he just had a story he wanted to tell, and he loved his characters and he loved his world enough that he believed in them, and I think it shows in his work. Um, so I think that's what inspired me most about his writing, was just how you can tell how much focus he put into it and how much of his own heart he put into it. And I can remember thinking, I can do this too. And if he can write a book, I can write a book. And I started for the first time really looking at how a book took shape. I noticed the structure. I noticed the plot points that happened and how there seemed to be a key point, something that happened in specific number of pages, like so much time passed and then there would be a conflict, or there would be some sort of a big meeting, like with Elrond and Rivendell. And it all started to look like a puzzle to me instead of just this big, vague, someone put this together and I have no idea how. So I think that's one of the reasons why I've always loved Tolkien so much, was it kind of inspired me and gave me that seed of belief in myself that I could write a story too, and it could be whatever I wanted it to be. Um, so yeah, I've always kind of seen Tolkien as my co-pilot, and he's always going to have a special place in my heart. I think no matter, I've got lots of other favorite authors. I mean, I almost did this project on Victor Hugo, but uh, it just kept coming back to Tolkien and wanting to reference Tolkien. Um, Tolkien. There's actually a point in the Lord of the Rings when they're trying to get into Moria and they're trying to think of the password for that door to let them into the door, and it's an Elvish, but it's a magical dwarven door, so they have to speak the word to get in, otherwise it won't open. And Tolkien put his love of riddles into that scene, and he put in his one of the things he saw that was most important in his life, which was friendship. So even though there was this conflict between the dwarves and elves that they kind of hated each other, there was still a magical dwarven door that had a secret password that was written in Elvish, and the password was friend. So it's little things like that that really made me want to write, because there was so much detail and so much history and so much culture in it all. Um, Tolkien was a linguist, and he put his love of languages into his own work by creating entire languages. And it seems daunting, but at the same time, it's also kind of a freeing thought that there's these structures and there's these rules that people think you have to do A, B, and C to be successful. But really, the first and foremost rule of writing is to believe and love your story yourself, because if you don't love it first, nobody will. So yeah, Tolkien is the J.R.R. Tolkien was the writer I wanted to introduce tonight. Not only was he a writer, but he was also a soldier and a father and a friend and a husband and a teacher. So he touched a lot of lives and made a difference in a lot of people, especially me. So thank you so much.